Hey team, it's January 11th in 2022, and welcome to the first edition of Titanic Times. Here with Papa Bear in the heartland. I'm up at the top of the embassy in the Citadel, overlooking mid-America, and we got LJ checking in from LA. What's happening, buddy?
We're out here. It's great.
That's awesome. Well, this little project started in the middle of COVID. I had posed to LJ that let's journal our way through COVID so we can leave a little legacy to those great grands and what in the future on what grandpa and grandma and aunts and uncles and everybody were doing during that time. And I posed the journal idea, and LJ said, what?
No.
Oh, what was your comeback? And I like this.
Well, I think that the only way to do something consistency is to do something that comes with ease, and it's like it works for you. It's the way you communicate. So I've always found that the most effective form of communication for me is just like talking. I could never write as effectively as I could as just speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to like articulate my thoughts, my feelings, or being able to even kind of like decompress and think through ideas for me has always been best done through conversation.
I like it. I like that idea. So he posed back, I'll journal with you, but we'll do it in a different format. We're going to journal with video and podcast. And it's like, whoa, this is all new to me totally. I didn't even know how to get on my computer, let alone hook up lights and do all this. And LJ's brought me through this, and it's been a wonderful experience. And I do think this is in our blood because Lauren Sr. Was a radio guy. So I think it's in your blood, LJ. You're very natural in front of the camera, and it comes with ease, and it's fun. So thus developed Titanic Times. And the Titanic Times developed right in the middle of COVID, which, oh my God, couldn't have been more brutal times. Literally a pandemic grips America, grips the world, whole reset on literally what does that mean to us, not only health-wise, life-wise, but financially. They started shutting stuff down, and people literally were getting the understanding they were on the Titanic ship and they were going down. They were hit, and it was starting to affect them mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, spiritually. So out of that, I got hit. And I'll give you my little story, then we'll share LJ's story, and then how this all spun off and come together.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I was 62 years old, had just written down on some index cards my next plan for how I'd be approaching the next 10 years. Really didn't think I would retire early. We are not retire early people. We retire kind of on time, or maybe a little later. On time for my age right now is 66 and a half. I certainly thought I'd make that, and probably more likely 72. So I wrote down 72, boom, there's where I'll be. Literally, financially, I went over the 4 steps of where I wanted to be financially, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And you kind of outline the program. Yeah. 62, everything's going good. Whoa, we make plans, God chuckles. 3 weeks later, I found myself at Mayo Clinic with a major health issue. All my plans were not going to happen. It was a Titanic time for me. Not only Titanic emotionally, but really ended up being Titanic financially, because you just don't plan on retiring 10 years before you retire. So right. I went through the whole process of what now, what next, and why not? And all of us get that. When you're hit and in Titanic times with any of these situations, the initial is what now? What the heck am I going to do today?
Right.
And the next is what next? What am I doing for the next 6 weeks to 6 months? And then why not? So that was my most recent Titanic times, which changed me into an early retirement, which changed me financially, which changed a lot. LJ, you experienced a typical or a Titanic time for you too. What happened for you?
Yeah, so for my journey in the last 10 years has been I think a little bit different than most. That doesn't mean that it probably doesn't have the same like psychological or physical or just career impact. But I started a business with two of my friends out of college. We built up a company. It was called Juice Spot. It was a raw vending machine, so it was raw, organic, unpasteurized juices and smoothies. We've always internally had the desire to test the market in San Francisco, where the tech boom was really happening. That's where investment was. That's where risk taking was. We moved out to San Francisco after we got FDA approval.
What year was that?
Uber, huh?
What year was that?
Oof.
Because we're in 2022 now. We really got hit 2020.
So that was about 8 years ago now.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were in the project for almost 10. We probably about 10 years ago we started it, but 8 years ago is when I moved out to California.
Okay.
And that's when we, went through the processes of also trying to get California state legislation passed, which we did. It took about 100 meetings inside the state house to make that happen. We drove, Lyft, and Uber until we found our investors. We found some investors that seemed really great at the time, helped us improve the trajectory of our business. But then over time, it was kind of this crazy, almost Netflix style show that I lived, where these guys from Cyprus and Istanbul introduced us to a manufacturer. We signed a manufacturing agreement, and then about 3 to 6 months down the road, they actually bought the manufacturing group that we were building our machines from, and seemingly kind of voided a lot of the stipulations that we had in order to have a plausible, a productive, and a game-changing product. Where really, to make a long story extremely short, they started to send money through our accounts when agreements hadn't been reached, or when different stipulations to the work orders hadn't been done, and seemingly embezzled money through our company after they removed us from the executive team immediately when they started to try to do this. And then throughout the next year and a half, kind of bled out our equity share and our stakeholding space through continuing to basically loan themselves money, embezzle it back through the company, and then continue to liquidate our shares, all in the same time of never selling one juice from the day that we were fired. Right. So, we came off as we were these young, naive, energetic college students that had all this desire to change the world in a thing that we actually thought could kind of simply change people's life by giving them nutrition that seems so obvious in a way that technology had finally caught up to, within a vessel that shouldn't ultimately be too difficult to make. And it ended up not working out, right? Like,
you ended up having 19 machines. You were on the ground for years. You guys were crunching it out, and then they just kind of took it over and killed it.
Yeah, and so it's one of those stories where in order to raise money, you do have to give up a stakehold in your company, and as you raise more money, you continually to lose it. You don't know you're upside down until you get there. And then
welcome to the Titanic world. You don't realize you're in the cold water until you're in the cold water.
And then, even when you're in the cold water, you're still a fighter, right? And fighters fight, and they're excited to be in the fight. And I was always one of those people. And the team that we surround ourselves with was excited to be a part of that, and was willing to overcome it. And it just didn't work out. it honestly, like, I think God had a different plan for us. One of our business partners, Kamal, went off to Minneapolis, has launched many great food businesses. Since then, has one of the best restaurants in Minneapolis called Stepchild, has an unbelievable chicken shop called Nashville Coop, which is, kind of setting itself up to be one of these huge nationwide franchises that's going to capture awesome market share and is a really exciting product. Another guy, he ended up, moving kind of up into like a little bit more of the boonies, which is more of his style of thing, and kind of got off the reservation, the way that he liked it, just living more of a simple space. And then for me, I got really deep into through that transition, right? So as they were stealing our company from us, I honestly just started.
Time out just for a little thing. You guys were embedded into LA. You were in Nordstrom's, you were in the art district, you had started to penetrate a market and were cooking.
We had been in
trucks going to run around
town. The journey, we had been in Nordstrom's, Neiman Marcus. We had a deal with Whole Foods 365 Disney stores before they were bought by Amazon to hopefully run out of a bunch of stores there.
Weren't you in Disney also?
We were in Snapchat, we were in Twitter, we were at Oracle. We had great contracts with Canteen Vending and all.
Gary V at one point in Disney.
Well, we were in Gary Vaynerchuk's offices in LA. Actually, it's the funny thing is a lot of the larger corporate offices, even like this office Zephyr, I live like right by right now, so I actually see every once in a while. But it's weird coming from like the perspective I'm at now. I'll like drive by, I'm like, oh, I've been in that building 100 times, but I didn't realize that it was so close to my house. I don't know why I had like two different. It kind of feels like I've lived two different LA lives. And so during the time that we were really having our company stripped from our grasp, I really got into like volunteering. COVID was right on the horizon. I was, told that this was our World War II moment for our generation. All hands on deck. Except, the difference, what was confusing about all hands on deck during this was sit down, shut up, stay in your room. All hands on deck. All hands on deck, sit down, shut up, stay in your room. That just didn't work for me. And so we started serving food at this soup kitchen downtown called the Midnight Mission. We stayed there in the first 3 months of COVID, during the time that like it was very uncertain what the heck it was. There was no vaccine available. They were still figuring out 1 mask or 2 masks. They were still figuring out if this was the virus that killed the world.
Well, I think this is wonderful because this is Titanic Times. You literally were going through what next? What's happening in the next couple months? Or you did what now, what next? And then ultimately it's led you guys to an unbelievable why not. So from downtown, what happened?
So after you fight for something for like 8 years that you are trying to like change the world with, and you miss some holidays, you move away from home, you take all the risks, you've risked your parents' money, your friends' money, friends' money to build something. You realize some of the things that you were not able to do while you were pushing the line. And one of the things that I always really wanted to do was just like be involved in not necessarily a nonprofit environment, but like a service environment, a space, an area within the city that I lived in that I knew was overcoming great odds. And that was, what do you want to call it? Underprivileged, disenfranchised, all these different things. So for me, I always kind of gravitated towards like homelessness early on. It's always one of those like very obvious things, something that you can drive down the road and go, wow, this is wild.
Well, in San Francisco, you actually lived in the Tenderloin. And in LA, you lived right by Skid Row. and now you're in the Watts district. I mean, you've always been a half a block off, if not in the middle.
Well, one of the things though, like, so we got kicked out of the Midnight Mission, where I was always like really trying to like be involved in some sort of like homeless cause near whatever I was doing.
Kicked out? Why? Because they
got kicked out because of Corona. So because of the COVID virus, they said that we no longer have like the liability coverage to have you here anymore. They're like, the state and the city are really coming down hard on us. We're serving 1,200 meals a day, and they're like, we legally can't have you in here. Like, we're scared of fines. We're scared to get shut down. Our donors are kind of pressing on us.
This is baffling. The city of Angels is shutting down their homeless food centers. That's baffling. If the world knew that, it's baffling.
And it's one of those.
How can they not get cut through the bureaucracy to still let those things exist?
And it was one of those things where that experience finally broke the glass on my understanding of how nonprofit or service-oriented organizations run, which is they're thin. There's not that many people. Now, if you go to a place on Christmas or Easter or Thanksgiving, there's hundreds of people around. And that's when most people serve. But if you go on like a normal Monday, you're going to realize that there's 1 to 3 people kind of running the place. And they're hoping that another 2 to 5 volunteers show up, or else it doesn't work. And so that's what I experienced down there during our World War II moment, which is I became the most consistent shower-upper within a month, right? Like, it was like, okay, I started to like kind of get to the keys to the different things. I was like helping run the different, when new volunteers would come, I was like a go-to person to like get them into the stream of things. I was getting the calls once if there wasn't a day that I wasn't going to show up, where it was like, hey, we actually need you in today.
Is this now in Watts you're talking about?
No, this was just during the soup kitchen. This was at the Midnight Mission.
Okay. I just want to make sure I didn't miss the Watts movement.
Yeah. So we got kicked out of there because of coronavirus though, right? Like, they were like, hey, you can't be here. I'm like, I'm not scared to die. This is our World War II moment. I'm cautious of the virus.
This is my Normandy Beach. I'm willing to do it.
Yeah, like, dude, like, this is just the easiest disaster that I could ever think of. It sucks. Like, was it stressful? Was it infuriating? Was it all of these things? Yes. Usually it just felt like there wasn't enough hands on deck. So we got kicked out of there. Anyways, every morning.
Kicked out as do-gooders trying to do the right thing, God's work, and it's like, we have no room for you in the inn. We have no
right. And it's funny because they just emailed us. It's not funny, but it sucks. But they just emailed us again this week. They said, hey, we had to kick out all of our volunteers again because Omicron. And so like, they're like, hey, can you guys pack some lunches and just like drive them into the facility? And one of the people that we work with, Laura, she did that yesterday. Just wasn't able to get that time out to do that. And we'll continue to probably do it throughout the next 2 weeks as they're closed. But I started to get online like periodically. I moved in with Elof. Kamal moved back to Minnesota.
You're not making a dime. You're barely hanging on.
Yeah, well, we went from 25 people on our team, and it was just like dissolving left and right. Like, we're firing people. We're drawing straws of who's firing people. It literally got down to now we're firing our roommates and our friends. And then it ends up just being myself and Kamal at the end, like just sitting there with like trying just trying to figure out now what we were thinking about. we started to podcast a lot. You know, we started Purple Politics at that time, which has turned into this network, Purple Banter, which you're on right now. This is just a show, Titanic Times. That's going to be a journal of myself and my father discussing what the thoughts are that we have going on and going through life, and how we're getting ready for tomorrow, and how we're dealing with yesterday. But
I like what you explained. It's kind of a thought experiment. We are not following a script. There's no preparation. We sit down, chat, and it's let's just talk. A dad and a son during COVID.
Yeah, and second.
Minnesota meets LA.
And Titanic Times is going to be a little bit more about what are your thoughts through the situations, talking less about the external things that are hitting you, but more about the way that you're positioning yourself of the things that you can control. Because through COVID, we all got so caught on thinking about all the other icebergs that are available, even though there might be one gigantic one that's coming at us that we almost are told to not think about, which is personal debt, personal responsibility, your ability to get up and be a good father, brother, sister, mother, your ability to be gracious to your community. For example, I want to get a little bit broader into how I got to the place that I'm at. So then on Instagram, we're searching every single kind of week going by, where's a place that I can go? What's open? Now, I'm not talking about restaurants. That would have been awesome too. I would have been down for it. If it was a dance club, I would be out there, but we couldn't. It was done.
You were talking about leading by example, making it happen, service above self. You're out there, you're not making money anyway. Let me serve mankind.
Yeah, well, I've always had this kind of feeling of not a burden, but a responsibility, but luckily a responsibility that I'm excited about, which is you've afforded me space and time. You specifically, you and mom have afforded me the ability to sit and ponder and be available for people. I'm the friend that can pick up the phone. I'm the friend that can get on a flight. I'm the son that can show up at all the Christmases. So
directly related to get on a flight when George Floyd happened, LJ was here the next day and worked up there, giving out food, clothes, and just trying to give a common base for the next 2 weeks. He was unbelievable. So we didn't allow anything, but God kind of set you up in a position. Here's where you're on now. Let's see what you can do with it.
Well, yeah. So, it kind of triggered that space in my head and this was pre George Floyd, where it was nonprofits and social organizations usually have 2 to 3 people that are available daily. They never have enough money and no one shows up. And so then going back for the George Floyd stuff, showing up and finding myself right at that George Floyd memorial, being one of the kind of staple individuals for a time period of a week and a half.
Well, like you were saying, by about day 3 or 4, people are coming to you. They think you're one of the leaders just because you're there. You showed up,
and that's kind of how it works, though.
And we're going to get in one of those programs one day. Dude, the art of showing up. We're going to do an hour on the art of showing up.
You come in, be passionate, lead with empathy, have discernment is a huge word that showed up to me throughout COVID, which is have discernment, be able to absorb what's happening and make a choice, and be comfortable with the choice, as long as it's built on a space that is built in empathy and optimism, but also built in survival, built in this idea that we are meant to go past tomorrow. We are if this is the worst disaster that is, if COVID's the one that takes out the world, we wouldn't be here. We've fought and died for so much more than COVID. Like I always think of my life as like having the grandparents around and looking down and like taking bets on like what LJ's gonna do or what Doc Stead's gonna do or what Ellison's gonna do or what Elof's gonna do. But when I do think of myself sometimes in it, whatever, call it narcissism or whatever, but like it's in a self-centric environment. They're taking bets on me, and they're like, let's see if anybody willing to put $10 on LJ of doing shit about it. And then someone's like, I got 100.
Say L.
And so, like, just if
I'm going wrong.
I was the type of person,
I'm laying everything out.
Huh?
I'm betting you make it happen.
So if I'm the type of person that thinks that, like, and I've been the type of guy, you shouldn't bet on me that day. It's happened.
Well, we know that because in Luke where they talk about those given much as they be expected, and you've really taken that to heart.
No, but
we in America we should have gratitude. We should all be doing that, and so many aren't. If you're in America, you should be taking on that attitude.
But I've failed in this much more than I've ever succeeded. In my perspective of me.
And an outsider would totally disagree.
Yeah, but they haven't woke up in my brain.
Success comes in a different way. Success isn't always monetarily. Success is value to the system and the value that you, Elof, the nonprofits, Love Wins, the Watts Group, Kamal, everybody out there on a day-to-day being working forward, leading by example, making it happen, trying to make it a better place, loving God, serving mankind. That's good stuff.
But this the thing is
value.
But if you've woke, the thing is that I've woke up more days than not and failed, right?
Absolutely.
But you get in good trenches, you set the pace sometimes. There's also been a lot of days where I'm like, you better bet all your money today because I'm coming and I'm going to make it happen. So, but anyways, we prayed this wild prayer in the middle of COVID. And myself and Elof, my future wife, my fiance, not the fiance at the time, but just new roommate that we were, girlfriend and boyfriend moving in together. And we said we'd love to run like a community center someday. It wasn't probably a month later that I saw one of my friends on Instagram at this farmer's market on a Wednesday. And boom, we went the next week and they were just starting distance learning the next week that we got there. That immediately
this is in Watts, in an area you'd never been.
Yeah, it's Watts, Imperial.
You heard about Rodney King riots, but you didn't know anything about Watts.
Well, it's Watts is pretty internationally known. I definitely had heard of Watts before. You've heard of the Rodney King riots. That's probably all you'd ever heard about it before. But I'm like, I got there and I'm like, some of these kids are like, you probably never heard of Watts. I'm like, no, I heard of Watts probably in 7th grade, through, hip hop and different elements of culture and then the disasters that have happened there. Anyways, so we find ourselves in the middle of the pandemic. Now distance learning is starting. We say, yo, we'd love to make this happen. And we found ourselves being there 5 or 6 days a week, running a distant learning park.
And nobody else there except a couple others. Justin's there and a couple of others.
Yeah, no, so there's this there's Justin Mayo. He is the long-standing anchor in the ground at this place called the Watts Empowerment Center. He's been there for 15 years. He showed up.
Shout out to Red Eye. Red Eye is a company that
that's his nonprofit.
Great work.
So where it was so wild though, right? This is when still 100,000 people are marching on Hollywood Boulevard for Black Lives Matter. And on Monday, a lot of Monday mornings, there's 2 or 3 of us fighting the fight in the poorest housing project in Los Angeles County with the youngest demographic in all the county, with the stakes highest of kids' education. And no one was showing up again.
They're willing to show up for the parade and the TV and all that, but when you show up for the hard work where nobody's recognizing you on Monday through Friday, where are they?
Well, don't get me wrong. Like there's some Fridays where we'd have 30 volunteers, but most Mondays we were lucky to have one. And it grew out into having about
for them because they're the same guys, great folks. I've met them. I've been there.
Well, and what was so wild to me is I had just been at one of the largest homeless soup kitchens in Los Angeles County that serves like the most meals about 6 months prior. And I'm like, okay, I wasn't the guy there, but I was definitely the only volunteer that showed up every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself in a position of like quasi leadership. I kind of like just was a Band-Aid guy, right? I was like the running back where it's like, they're not going to let me throw the ball there, but they would like hand it off and have me just do some random tasks throughout the day.
I love the sport analogies.
So how did it happen that like in one of the largest soup kitchens, we got kicked out? Now we go to the poorest housing development in LA County, and within 3 days, again, not the quarterback, but like a role player, like, and not like a role player on a team of 10. I'm saying a role player on a team of 5. With every, like, and now I'm living in a county with what, like 8 million people or something like that. I don't know LA's size. It's like 8 million or something like that. I'm gonna guess roughly. I could be wrong, but how did that happen? How is it like that's one of the biggest things, and this is one of the biggest issues that everybody cares about?
And there's money galore that's available for the area and not being used. Isn't there a center right next to you that gets like hundreds of thousands and they're not doing anything with it?
We're sitting in the middle of the presidential election when Biden and Trump are arguing about these central issues, which is disenfranchisement, equity gaps, childhood development, caring about kids in foster care systems, caring about the lives of individuals that are marginalized based on their race. It's here. Like that's a situation.
Ground zero.
I have my friends screaming on the internet about $1 trillion agendas. Crickets on Mondays, crickets on Tuesdays, maybe 5 volunteers on Fridays, Thursdays, forget about it. On Friday, show up again. Like now I got some volunteers again.
So I got to talk about crickets nationally, crickets statewide. The governor wasn't coming down. The mayor's not coming down. The councilman not coming down. Nobody's coming down.
And then mind you, this is during the time period where no one's working. Now, if like in a normal like 9 to 5 situation that we've all kind of find ourselves back into, I get it. You're busy. You should worry about your tribe. You got to think about your spouse, your family. It's hard enough to row that boat. You can't expect everything else to row the boat. The only thing that I really experienced was like, we're all yelling at everybody else to do something about something that we can control. And don't get me wrong, like it's also a situation where like I'm still trying to find my way through being however consistent I can be in Watts, whether it's, 2 days a week or 4 days a week. I don't know exactly. Like minimum's like a 2-day a week thing, but I hope to be able to find myself in a space where I can be more a part of a lot of these kids' lives. And it's difficult to understand because, we built our nonprofit Love Wins through that situation to be able to help start stabilizing different opportunities. Elof now works for an incredible organization that's continuing to build systems of creating emergency like welfare funding for kids that are dealing with homelessness or kids that are in
What's the name
foster.
of that system?
What's that?
What's the name of that system?
The change reaction.
Change. Okay. And then give me, we hear Elof's name 2 or 3 times. Give me a 30-second thumbnail sketch of Elof, the most special gal in the world.
Oh, you'll see her sometime on here. We'll get her on here sometime.
Yeah.
We'll let her speak for herself.
Then I'm gonna brag and I'm gonna give it. Here's Elof Feltuma, refugee from Iraq, ends up coming to Southern California, goes through the community college system, goes to Harvard, comes back, and what's her heart into? Education, community development, leading by example, making it happen, service above self. Meets this like-minded person from the Midwest, this blonde-haired, blue-eyed Norwegian, and this beautiful Iraqi gal are really making good things happen.
Mostly correct. Only thing, she didn't do the community college. She went to Santa Barbara.
What's that?
She went to Santa Barbara.
Wasn't that a community?
No, far from it. Santa Barbara is a dope college in the California system.
Well, as we know with the Steads, Ed Stead would always say, we'll never let, let's say,
never let the truth get in the way of a good story. And I would agree with that, except if you're talking about the history of my fiance.
Yep. And then all being said, I could be wrong.
I usually wouldn't. You're going to find that I'll let him embellish. But there's some times that I got to keep the facts straight and specific.
Well, I like where you said mostly right. I like that.
Yeah. But yeah, so she has an education in education, right? So that's how we really got like stuck into building educational programs in Watts really quickly. It
and you
came
guys
through
are pulling on the same rope the same way and trying to make it happen.
Well, yeah, it really came down to her experience and her ability to like guide what those programs would look like, and she continues to build them. And then she got kind of poached by a great company to help her continue to do what she's doing, just do it in more of a foundational way that's able to create more like systematic growth and prosperity and stuff like that. But to get now, so that's the history of how we're here, right? This is the Titanic Times. This is the journey that got us to this place where we started doing this show called Purple Politics, but we realized quickly that, and I'm still going to do that show through this Purple Banter Network, but I found that people are really scared of the term politics. I don't want everything to always be political. And the reason I say that is thinking that everything's political is really taking out a lot of your personal responsibility for the experiences that you're having. Right? Like, and this is the great part about this book, Atomic Habits, right? I was able to kind of read up on what that book's about and to listen to some of the different topics that it really like it heightens, and it comes down to what was calling about habits, but it's more the way that we like look at habits and how we one of the things that definitely resonated with me and has always been a mainstay to me is showing up is a big one.
Absolutely. And that goes into one of his main ones that really resonates with me. Well, first of all, we're going to highlight a book of the week every time, just for fun. A book of the week, a skit of the week, and a movie of the week. And Atomic Habits by Jim Clear is just the book right now, without a doubt. And it's a lot of things you've known in the past, you got taught by parents and grandparents, but it's repackaged in another way with a different way he looks at things, and then gives you a little pause to kind of reconsider and look at these another way. And then he gives a great story with each one. For example, baby steps, small changes can make such a huge difference. And he gives the example of a plane taking off. And this is all back to habits, good and bad. If you have a small good habit or a small bad habit, can really affect you in the long run. So be careful. Well, here would be a small adjustment. If a plane takes off from LAX and heading like to Newark, if shortly into the takeoff, it has a correction of about 3.5 degrees south by mistake, nobody in the plane's going to notice. It's such a small correction. Well, what happens? when the plane's supposed to be landing in Newark, instead it's at landing in Washington, DC. So such a small trajectory change at the start can make a huge difference at the end. And he has so many good stories explaining that, and just directly related to all of us individually. You can see where little small corrections now and habits can make a huge, or even a mind shift can make a huge change down the line. You yourself, look what's happened where you've gone from the business world to a small shift and change that is going to have huge positive impact on others that are coming up through the Watts system. So I think Jim Clear did a great job of making us think some of those. Did you get to thumb through any of it? The rest, I guess, yeah. I would say this. I took Evelyn Wood's speed reading course right out of high school, and I love books where you don't have to read the whole book, but you can just go to the summaries at the end of the chapter. And this guy is super at summaries at the end of the chapter. So you could pick up this book and in an hour read the summaries and get a good grip of what's going on. But a lot of it's small changes will make big impacts.
Well, I definitely liked the idea of putting spaces in your house directed towards specific tasks. So, absolutely, not working on the couch, not working in bed, kind of deeming places for productivity or deeming places for rest, where you're like, this is not a phone zone. Also making the habits that you desire, making them very public. So for example, like I want to read the Bible more. I have a Bible out. I have Bibles all over the place. I want to read more. I maybe put a few books out. That doesn't mean I've done any of it. I still haven't, but they're there. They're out and they're about.
It's gentle, positive reminders to do the right thing. And he's the greatest at kind of setting up the scene to stay away from bad habits. Like I actively decided not to be a drinker. My better half, Pammy's mom and dad, had tendencies to overindulge in that way. So I set out right off the bat. I can't resist temptation, but I can set up boundaries even before I get into a temptation situation, where I just go, no, my process is I'm not going to be a drinker, end of story. And that has really helped me, because it's so easy to go down a bad path, and I choose not going to go there. And in Atomic Habits, he gives other little cues and ways to address that. It's a great book. I really, really highly recommend it.
How do you, like, so I was talking to like my friend Cole, right?
Yeah.
And he was discussing how, we got the curly headed over.
Hey, there she is. Hi, buddy. There she is. We knew she'd be in at some point. She's the superstar behind this whole thing. You're in the first episode of Titanic Times.
Oh, I love it. I'm glad I can make a guest appearance.
Yeah.
I love it. You can see literally we're right down in the heart of Marina Del Rey. You can see a clothes basket in the background. You're getting the real thing. So we're going to be watching this, not we will be, but relatives and others. It's kind of our legacies for many generations down. Guess what? Nothing has changed. Everything old is new again. We're
like on the last street in Venice. One street over is Marina Del Rey.
Yeah. Well, I know you're in a great area. We love it.
Intersection of it.
I love it. Y'all have
fun.
fun.
Thank you, Eli, for keeping him on the straight and narrow.
Oh, always.
But so recently there was some photos that came out of you in a wheelchair, right?
Okay.
And it created a kind of a storm of texts for me of my friends being like, what's going on with Dockstead in the wheelchair? How's Pops? Like, what's going on? And a lot of my friends had just, like Cole, for example, he was just like, man, it kind of scared me to see your dad in a wheelchair. How's he doing? He was like, he was always such a good role model for us growing up.
Well, that's nice to hear. And this guy's a big time successful like broker now. So
yeah,
he's made more in the last year than I have in a lifetime. So that's pretty cool.
Now, what
if success is money?
One of the biggest things, though, I think that you've always been able to do consistently is almost a habit of yours of like showing up with intrigue and desire to know people and actually like you really like show up for a run. You've done that consistently the entire time that I've ever known you. How do you prepare for that? Like, is it just based on the fact that you're just interested in people, or is it, do you have a higher motor than everybody else and your energy level is just higher? Or is there anything that you do to prepare for just being available for the day like that?
I just take huge energy. I don't give energy, I take energy in the fact that just being around systems and people and new ideas and new people and the fun that you always had with your friends, I didn't think I brought anything to the situation. I only took from the situation in that you guys supplied me energy. I didn't go in there in advance thinking I had to do this and that. It all came natural, but I really got so much positive, good energy from all the great things you guys were doing. You were a good group of good crew. We were just so blessed.
Well, I think you've set such a good tone in your life, though, where every room that you step into, especially like when you're in Rochester, they kind of expect it from you to like be high energy, to have fun. Everyone already feels connected to you, and it feels like your best friend right away. And you do that because you just care about people, but it also sets up the environment. So like every time you walk into a room, it's already like almost prepared for your energy. And if you're low energy, I feel like it just brings you right back into the place that you left it last, which was high energy.
Well, ultimately, it's just God-given, because unlike you, I literally take to heart of those that have been given much as be expected. When John Stead came over from England 5 generations ago, and then on to Ed and Elva and Lauren Sr. and you and me and the next generation, we really have to have gratitude for those that set us up to be in this good position and try to lead by example, make it happen, service above self, loving God, serving mankind, and sending it forward. And that's my marching orders. I think I have marching orders, and that's my goal each and every day, no doubt about it.
Well, that's where I think, one of the things that I've always done best is honestly just like not being a drinking guy, right? Like not having that around you and in that system, because I've obviously I played with drinking throughout college and after college, and you do find yourself in this position that if you're in kind of like the trenches of drinking too often, that happens to be what the event is about. So if you're watching a football game, but you're really finding an environment to drink in. You're going out with friends, but you're kind of just waiting for the next thing, the next shot, the next cheers, the next, you're just chasing this thing. And so in sobriety, especially in the consistency that you've had with it, it's like, well, you've been in multiple rooms, especially when I think I was in traveling hockey and I didn't even realize it. While a lot of the other parents were chasing the next drink, you're just chasing the next conversation, or you're chasing the next, I want to know more about you, or I'm going to take a video of this situation, or I'm just going to,
which I got in trouble many times for doing.
Oh, I'm sure. Right. And so taking that out of the environment just leaves so much more open for, while everyone else is sitting there with kind of tunnel vision towards the next alcohol, or to rise up into the place where now they can finally be friendly because they finally had enough to drink. You're just chasing something, and you're kind of chasing something forever. And I do think our society is way too stuck in that space.
Well, and you're right. And I really take it back to Atomic Habits, where he encapsulated it. I really try to set up systems of avoidance of issues like drinking versus resist it. I can't resist temptation any more than anybody else. I'm a sinner just like anybody else. But I tried to set up systems where, like in a room where everyone drinking in hockey, I'm not going to even take the first drink, and I'm going to avoid the drinking situation. Except I'm going to try to dive into, hey, what are you doing? What's your next project? And I showing interest in other people and what they're doing, talking about ideas versus people, is a great thing. You know, I always seek out people that are talking about other ideas and not necessarily talking about other people.
Right. Well, just kind of owning, just like looking back into like yourself and figuring out like, how do you feel about something? How does it create positivity for other people? How does it, and then really like one of the things that I really liked about Atomic Habits is the idea of stacking habits.
Absolutely.
So it's the idea of, well, I brush my teeth in the morning, and right after I brush my teeth, then I read for 15 minutes. And when I read for 15 minutes, I read on this particular couch. And then after that, I make myself some breakfast. And instead of saying,
I make my bed in there somewhere, having some consistency and showing up for your own life is so important.
Yeah. So it's less about like eat more vegetables, but it's, you know, it's like every single dinner, I'm going to have a vegetable option that I make. And so I do think that that's a really valuable, it sounds kind of boring a little bit, but I have realized that structure can create a lot of freedom in spurts of time. And then you'll kind of pick and choose what you like and what you don't like and gravitate towards it. But I've always liked like New Year's. Like New Year's is a fun time for, I do stick with my goals, like New Year's resolutions, I actually like stick with and complete throughout the years. Like I didn't drink Red Bull last year. And I think one of the years
that's tough to give up. I love Red Bull.
Yeah. One of the years before that, like I didn't do chips.
We want them to be our sponsor besides Tropicana. We're always going to promote juices, but Red Bull we take too.
100%. And it's just more of like a little just mind play of just like being good to yourself and like actually starting to like trust yourself more. So I would never try to like eliminate something that I couldn't trust that I could complete, but it's a good task to take on.
Well, out of this book, if there's any chapter you read, go into the self-control chapter, number 7. And that is so important for all of us. With self-control, you can really conquer all these areas we're going to go into in the next year, where we're talking about mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, and financial. Self-control in your finances. Do the right thing. Do you need to purchase this car when you could get a little older car that might just be as safe, but don't spend as much? So self-control in finances is a huge thing for your generation. Self-control in education, you know, getting done, you know, you got your 2-year degree, now your 4-year degree, control that and move forward. And then in, you know, spiritual and faith, self-control, self-control in reading how to give a prayer. You taught me this, the 4 parts of prayer. First part of prayer is thanking the Almighty Creator, the most wise one that created us and did these great things. Thanking for us for bringing us to this point. Section 2, you know, second quarter would be about thanking God, the Creator, for putting us in this position you're in now. Like right now, you're in this position of Watts. You could be complaining that you're not making enough and you're not doing this, but you're thanking God for putting you in this position right now because He has a plan for you. Ultimately, the third part or a third quarter of a prayer would be asking God what you need. You know, there's nothing wrong for that. Please give me the guidance to make this best decision and put me in a position around people to do the right thing. And then finally, the finale of every prayer is just to make it right. What do you always say? I like the way you end a prayer.
It's, you know, it's really, my prayers either start or end with like, dear Lord, please help me become the type of person that gets into heaven. Please help my heart be pure, my mind be clear, my body be healthy, and my faith be strong. And then through that, I would, you know, pray that prayer for people in my life.
And that so encapsulates what we're trying to make this all about, which is literally leading by example, making it happen, loving God, serving mankind, without a doubt. Hey, we got to show you. So this is what the Titanic Times, this is our website. LJ made that last night. That is solid. I like that a lot. That's going to be good. And then I want to give you just a little background and then do pick up Atomic Times. Any other thoughts on Atomic Habits?
No.
Okay. I do want to give, we're about coming up on an hour, but I want to give one idea of how Titanic Times spun off. In fact, no, I'm going to do that in the future. Ultimately, everyone gets an assignment. The assignment today is to Google W.T. Stead, William Thomas Stead, and he was our kin who went down on the Titanic. And that's how all these things are spinning off, because there's so many lessons from the Titanic that can be learned. For example, in a relationship or in your finances or in your business or whatever it is, say in a relationship, is this a ship you should leave the harbor with, or should you let this ship sail without you? Those who didn't get on the Titanic lived. Those that got on it, some of them died. So there's about 7 to 10 rules that we're going to be outlining in the Titanic Times that will be able to give you a reference that when bad times happen, you're not struggling in the water and going to drown. You're going to go, hey, I expected this can occur. This is something, Titanic or times are going to happen. And what can I do now to address it? In Atomic Habits, they had a great idea of imagine. Everyone always tries to imagine success. Try to imagine 6 months down the line and take any of those topics, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, financial. Take financial. What if things have gone to hell in a handbasket? What if, what now, what next, why not? Play the what if game. What if that happened? What would I be doing? Here's the steps and framework and format I'd follow. So once you visualized and think about that could happen, now, if it does, and hopefully it never does, you're not fearing fear anymore. You've actually given consideration to kind of worst case scenarios. So I think that's an exercise he does in Atomic Habits that I thought was really, really neat too. So kind of fun stuff. But W.C.T. Stead, I'm jumping around too much. He went down the Titanic. He was the leading expert on childhood sex trafficking prevention. He was coming to America to name names, and I'm going to outline in a book called What If the Sinking of the Titanic Was No Accident? Sinking the Unsinkable. I will show there's 5 people on the Titanic that they wanted dead. Instead was one of them. So all these Titanic ideas spin off of that, and that's where we're at. Any other thoughts here today, LJ? So we'll go into that in a little bit more detail.
Well, so a lot of people want to write a book. What gives you the delusions of grandeur that you can?
That's interesting. I'm in a writers group, and they usually say writers fall into one, overconfident, or that they have no confidence at all. And I wouldn't say I'm overconfident. I'm just calmly confident that I'm doing the right thing, because it's a passion with the purpose. I'm not just writing on anything. I'm writing on how to make people more aware of what's going on with childhood sex trafficking and how we can help prevent it. So I'm not doing a how-to book on how to fix a car or something like that. To me, I can write this because it's ingrained, it's innate, it's in my family, it's in our blood. We don't have a choice. I've talked to some other writers on things, and they'll go, do you really want to write? And it's like, no, like now I'm retired. I'd rather be golfing, fishing, playing pickleball. I have no choice. I have to write. I have to take this project to completion. And this project then leads into other huge things like Titanic Times and being able to interact with my son, who, if I was still working, we wouldn't be doing this.
No,
God has intended us to be doing
3 over.
I would be, heck, it'd be mid-afternoon, 4 o'clock. I'd be working for 4 hours and bringing some epic homework home. There's no way. But for some reason, this is supposed to happen. So I'm just taking the leads that God has put me in. I could be mad that I had health reasons, issues, and this will put financial burdens on, and this isn't what I expected at all. Guess what? That's okay. Where you're at right now, this isn't where you expected to be 3 years ago.
Well, it's weird
because I
because
expected to be 3 years ago, but take where you're at, and it's not what happens to you, it's how you respond to it and do good things with it.
that's right. It's good.
Good. Well, thank you. I really appreciate you coaxing us into this thought experiment and journaling without using a journal, because you know who reads journals in the future? Some do, but most don't. Where I really think 4 generations from now, they might kick up and listen to us on audio, or they might listen to us in a junior college class on what were normal people doing in COVID. Maybe they'll listen to what the Steads were up to a little bit.
Yeah, I don't really know if they're gonna like look back on this and say, you know, great grandpa and grandpa were pretty messed up, and they're writing a college dissertation on like what they like we are what was wrong, or if it's just a nice little like glimpse into the ideas that were happening during the day that we are having. I don't know. We'll kind of see. I just think we do live in an environment that too many bad people are trying to control narratives and control the discussion. They got the reins on all this. And so I continue to try to poke and push to just have conversation available for something that might be a little bit different.
Oh, I like that thought. I really, really like that. It's time for us to take control in my better half, Pammy and I, and we'll have her on at some point too. And we'll have little sis Elle on, Allison Taylor. These guys are all contributing to the book and the process. But this is really a legacy we're trying to move forward in a good way. It's not about us. It's not about WT. It's about trying to put a spotlight on trying to help people and give them a framework on what they can do as they move forward. So Godspeed, buddy. Faith, family, friends, football, and God bless the USA. Lead by example, make it happen. Service above self.
School.